All right, so today we're doing multi-step equations. So far, we've done solving one-step equations where we just had to add or subtract or multiply or divide. And then last week, we moved into two-step equations where we had to add and subtract and then also multiply and divide, which is what our jump start was today. And so these first few are just real quick review from last week. So these should be super duper easy. Just take a second to do this example number 1. Again, you always want to think about what's your goal, right? Here is your X right here. Your goal is to get your variable by itself on one side of the equation. So you always have to ask yourself, what all is attached to it and how's it attached? And if it's addition and subtraction, you break it loose with addition and subtraction. If it's multiplication, division, you break it loose with the opposite, multiplication or division. So in this case, we've got a -4. We're going to add 4. And add 4. This is pretty straightforward. Remember, this is your equal sign is your scale or your balance. And so the -4 and +4 cancel out, leaving the X by itself. And then -1 and +4 equals +3. And again, you don't ever have to rewrite it for me, but just know that you'll see it on like a multiple choice or a I-step. They'll flip it around and write it like this. Okay, very basic. This is, like I said, this is a quick review. All right, example number 2. Write that down really quickly. Won't take but a sec. It's a short one. Again, zero in on what it is you're trying to get by itself, which in this case is the V. And we look at what is attached to the V and how's it attached. Well, currently it's in a fraction, right? And on the bottom of that fraction, which fraction is division. So that tells us since it's attached to something through division, we're going to do multiplication to break it loose. And whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. And since that denominator is an 8, we're going to also multiply both sides by 8. And what that does is that top 8 and that bottom 8 cancel out, breaking that V by itself, which again was our goal. And then -4 times 8 is -32. Okay? And then one more quick basic one, super duper fast. -5 is attached to our X. It's attached by multiplication. Anytime a number and a letter are next to each other, that's multiplication. So in order to break it loose, we do division. So we're going to divide by -5 on both sides, remember, because we keep it even. And when we do that, we get our X by itself on the right. And on the left, -40 divided by -5 is +8. So your answer is X equals 8. Okay? All right. Now let's move on to some new stuff. So go ahead and write this down. And we're going to talk about, this is a little different because in this one we got 2 steps. All right, so again, let's think about the whole scale idea that we've talked about, right? So if you look at this equation, I'm going to draw my little squiggly lines of my scale. If I showed you a basket or a scale, right, and I had baskets sitting on each side of the scale, and in one side of the basket, I had 4 red apples and 1 green apple, because if you look up there, you've got 4A and 1A, right? So if I said I had 4 red apples and 1 green apple, but I just asked you how many apples were in that basket, what would you tell me? Somebody. 4 red apples and 1 green apple. How many apples do I have altogether? 5. Okay. When the variable, or when the A's, in this case, the apples, when they are on the same side of the equation, I don't need to subtract 4 or subtract 1 because I'm not moving it to the other side of the scale. All I'm doing is combining the 1A and the 4A and just rewriting it as 5A. Okay, I'm not changing anything. I'm not moving it to the other side of the equation. I'm not subtracting it away. I'm just simply combining them together. They stay on the same side, so I'm not moving anything. So that's that first step. And I'm just going to put that +8 right there. I didn't do anything with it. Equals 3. All right. So the first step, when you have anything on the same side of the equation, if you like to write out steps, this is really going to help you, okay? So step one is always to combine like terms on each side. So if there are like terms to combine, first thing you want to do is combine like terms. Okay? Then the next step is that you want to move all variables to one side and all numbers to the other. You should be writing these steps down, guys. You need to have them because you're going to follow these steps through every one of these tomorrow, and I won't be here tomorrow. Got it, Corbin? Got your steps written down? Okay. Yep, because you're going to need them. All right. So the first step is combine like terms on each side. We looked at the left side and we had an A, a 1A, and a 4A. We combined those into 5A, right? We weren't subtracting or moving anything. We're just combining like terms. And then that plus 8 stayed over there. It was by itself, and then equals 3. Now we're ready to actually move all the variables to one side, which in this case, there's only those 5A's, and they're already by themselves over there, and then move all the numbers to the other. So now we're actually ready to subtract 8 and subtract 8. And remember, our equal sign still stays that scale. And when we do that, the positive 8 and the negative 8 cancel out, and we're left with 5A equals, and then 3 minus 8 is negative 5. And then we divide by 5 because we want to get A by itself finally, and we divide by 5 and we get A equals negative 1. And that's our final answer here. And I would say the biggest mistake I see when I teach this to my algebra students every single year is that everybody wants to start minusing 4A and minusing 1A. And you don't do that if they're already together on the same side of the equal sign. The only time you do that whole opposite thing and you subtract to move it is if you're moving it clear on the other side of the equal sign. If they're already over there together, you just smoosh them together into one term, okay? So let's do this one as an example. Number 5. And again, right, first things first, you always check both sides of the equation for anything that you can combine, okay? And again, we have 3m and negative 2m already together on the same side of the equation. So all we're going to do is rewrite those as 1m. So 3 minus 2, or 3m minus 2m, is like saying 3 apples minus 2 apples is just simply 1 apple. So you just rewrite it as 1m. And then we didn't do anything with that plus 8 equals 16, so I'm going to leave it. And then the next step is to, right, I think that bell gets longer every day, doesn't it? The next step is to move all the numbers over to one side and all the variables over to the other. Well, we only have one m and it's already over there by its, it's already on one side by itself. So we just want to move the number to the other. And so we're going to minus 8 and minus 8. And again, right, thinking of this equal sign as your scale. Because we actually want to move it to the other side of the scale, that's why we have to subtract it off of both sides. And that leaves us the 1m. And do I have to write that 1 in front of the m? What do you guys think? Nope. I'm going to go ahead and drop the 1 for now because I don't need it now. And 16 minus 8 is just 8. Okay? Make sense? Combine like terms. Step 1 is to combine like terms. Step 2 is to move all the variables to one side and all the numbers to the other. Step 3 is to solve for the variable. All right, so let's look at this one. I'll give you a second to get this one written down. All right, so first step is to look and see if there's anything I can combine on the left. I have -1 and minus 7r. Those aren't like terms. One has an r, one doesn't, so nothing over there. Look on the right. I have -6r and 7. Again, nothing to combine. One has an r, one doesn't, so they're not like terms. So I can skip step 1. Step 2 says to get all the variables on one side and all your numbers on the other. Now, I want to show you both ways because I want you to understand that if you do it one way, it's going to mean an extra step, but you'll eventually get to the right answer, okay? We are used to always moving the variables over to the left, right? So if I'm going to move, and I'm going to give myself my little equal sign here, my little balance. If I'm going to move all of my r's over to the left, what would I do with that -6r to move it? I would add 6r, right? And if I add 6r to one side of the scale, I have to add 6r to the other. Now I'm just going to go ahead and reduce this first. I'll mess with the numbers here in a minute. So that leaves me -1. I'm just going to drop that down. I didn't do anything with it. -7r plus 6r is -1r equals, and then those are gone, 7. Now, the next thing is to get all the numbers over to the other side. So, because I have a -1, I'm going to do +1 and +1. And the -1 and the +1 cancel out, leaving me -1r equals 7 plus 1 is 8. Now, is my r by itself? What needs to go? Not just, if it was just a plain old 1, yeah. If it was just a plain 1 like here, we can just not write it because it's a +1. But because it's a -1, we have to divide by, because it's attached with multiplication, remember? So we have to divide by -1 and divide by -1 to get that negative off of there. And when we do that, now we're left with r equals, and then 8 divided by -1 is -8. Okay? I want to show you the other way you could do it, where you don't have to do that dividing step. Okay? I have -6r, and if I add 6 to the other side, it's going to give me -1. If I have -7r and I add 7 to the other side, where's that going to give me more? It's going to give me a positive r, right? So if I, instead of moving the 6 to the left, if I add 7r and add 7r, okay, all I'm doing is deciding to do the r on the other side. Now on this side, I have -1 equals -6r plus 7r is +1r plus 7. Now what? Corbin, what would my next step be? Okay, and Gabby, what's that give me on both sides? -8 equals what? Okay. Am I good to just drop the 1 when it's positive? Yeah. So you'll notice, right, I got the answer of -8 and -8. So you're going to get the same answer either way. If it is easier for you to always always move the variables over to the left just to keep it straight, and always move the numbers over to the right, just know that in the end, you may have to divide off a -1 if you're left with a negative sign in front. If you don't care which side you move the variables to, and you want to move it over to the other side to keep your R positive and move your numbers over to the other side, then you're going to end up with a positive R, and you'll still end up with that same answer. Okay? Does that make sense? All right. So now this one gets a little bit harder. And then our last example is the hardest one you'll see. Gabby, you got it written down? You need to get your head up off your desk, or you have to stand up. Those are your two options. This is a little bit longer, but it doesn't really get too much harder. I'll show you. So remember last week I said we were going to talk about distribution first. So if I have a 5 right outside of the parentheses, that means multiplication. So I have to multiply that 5 times everything inside the parentheses, okay? So what's 5 times 1? 5, right? And 5 times -7 is -35, and that x stays with it. And then I just keep writing the rest of it. Plus 8x equals -184. And now it looks like the problem we just did a few times ago. Do I have like terms on either side that I can combine before I start adding and subtracting and moving stuff? What do I have? Gabby, what do I have? Step 1 of our 3 steps was to combine like terms. Do I have any like terms to combine on the left or the right? Okay, so what do I have to do? Yeah, these right here, the -35 and the 8x are both x's. So I'm going to rewrite them. I'm going to leave that 5 right where it was. I'm going to combine -35 and +8. And since the signs don't match, I subtract and take the sign of the bigger. Well, 35 is the bigger number, so I know I'm going to get a negative number. What's 35 minus 8? 27? 27x equals -184. Okay, Corbin, now what? Yep, I'm going to subtract 5 because now it's time to move all my numbers over to one side. So I subtract 5 and subtract 5, and I get -27x over here equals, two negatives go deeper negative, so -189. And then Bryce, what's next? Yep, by what? Positive or negative? Negative, because I want to get that -27 off there. And Gabby, what's 189 divided by 27? 7? Positive or negative? Positive. Two negatives divided by each other give me a positive. Good. So x equals 7. So that big, ugly problem reduces all the way down to 7. I will tell you the ones on your homework today and the ones on your homework tomorrow, you won't have any fractions as answers. They'll all be whole numbers, negative or positive. They'll all be whole numbers. Okay? I don't even know zero's even one of your answers. Nope, it's not. Oh, yep, one of them. Two of them. Two of them have an answer of 0. Okay. Last one. This is as big as it gets. This is as worst as you'll see on your homework. So make sure you get this example written down in your homework, or I mean in your notes, so that you'll have it to refer back to. And technically, what we should have put as step 1 up there in those steps that we wrote was distribute if needed. So just always know that you always, if there's parentheses, you always distribute first then go to the combined like terms. I'll give you a second to kind of get a jump on it and see what you think, and then we'll work through it. All right. Bryce, what'd you do first?
First thing I did was read the problem.
Okay, and then what?
And then I distributed the 7 to the -4p and the 8.
Good. So that would, I'm going to drop the 7p down. 7 times -4 is what?
28.
Negative, right? Make sure the negative. Negative 28p. And what's positive 7 times positive 8? Not adding, we're multiplying. Okay, so plus 56. And that's everything on the left side equals. And then I'm just going to write all this out just as it is because I don't have anything to distribute over there. All right? Corbin, what would you do next? Good. We're going to combine those like terms. So what's 7 minus 28? -21p. Good. And remember, because they're 7p and 28p, we keep our p. I mean, like it's -21p when we combine them. So then I'm just going to write that plus 56 because I didn't do anything with that, and I'm going to write the -8p minus 35. All right, Gabby, what's next? Okay, it's already negative, so how would I move it? Okay, so I'm going to add 8p to this side, and I'm going to add 8p to this side. And notice I put it right underneath the other p so that I know to combine those two. All right, so what's -21 plus 8? Nope, they're not both. Remember, we added and we added. We added 8p and added 8p. So what's -21 plus 8? Positive or negative? Okay, so we got -13p, right? Plus 56 equals, that's gone now, -35. All right, Corbin, now what? Good. Subtract 56 and subtract 56 from both sides because we're moving it from one side of the equal sign to the other. That's -13p equals, what did we get over there? Okay, and then Bryce, what's the last step?
Divide by -13.
Good. And Gabby, what's our final answer? Positive or negative? Good. Positive 7. So it looks like a lot, but if as long as you do it in that same order of those steps every single time. And so if you want, if I were you, I would come back up here into the steps that we wrote, and I would, just as a reminder to yourself, I would stick in a precursor of distribute, because you always want to distribute if needed first, and then combine like terms, and then move all the variables to one side, the numbers to the other, and then solve. Okay? Any questions on this? All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to give you guys a worksheet. So for those of you at home, you'll click on the load button, load your worksheet in Kami, and several of you at home are turning in work where you just write v equals negative 32 or a equals negative 1, and you don't show all of this right here, this middle work to get there. That doesn't get you any credit, okay? That still gets you, if you turn in a homework assignment with all the answers but no work, it's a 0. So make sure, even if it's as simple as number 3, right, and you divide both sides by negative 5, I want to see the work of what you did to get x equals 8. So don't ever just write the answer. That doesn't work in math class, okay? That's a reminder for those of you at home, because I've been getting a lot of those turned in. So hit load on Kami, and then work the problems on the worksheet, showing all of your work, and then hit submit and submit. And then tomorrow, trying to think, class starts at 45. What time does? I probably won't be able to do a live Google Meet with you tomorrow during class time because of the timing of my mom's surgery. So I think what I'll do is I'll leave the key with the sub. I know that doesn't help you at home, but I'll leave the key with the sub, and you can check your answers. If once he sees that your worksheet's done, then he'll give you the key. You can check your answers. For those of you at home, I will grade your worksheet, and I'll make corrections on the Kami assignment. And so then the next day you can go back in, load the assignment again, and it'll show your work and it'll show my corrections. Okay. And that way you can kind of see what you need to do if you need to tweak anything. And then for tomorrow, there'll be just an assignment just like today. It'll be the exact same stuff. So you can use your notes and your worksheet to help you with it. Okay. All right. Let me stop recording here. If you're at home and you need anything, of course, as always, shoot me an email.